Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Maria Parham, editorial page editor for the Arizona Daily Star. Tonight on AZ Illustrated Metro, we'll recap the results of yesterday's local elections. We'll also ask about long-term plans to borrow money for government projects in Pima County. And finally, we'll get two takes on the new World War II memorial in downtown Tucson. But first, a look at today's top stories.
Tucson area voters passed judgment Tuesday on city council candidates, budget and financial issues, and proposed creation of a new municipal government. Complete election results are on our website, news.azpm.org. And coming up in a few minutes on AZ Illustrated Metro, we'll have a review and analysis of the election outcomes. Interstate highways in Arizona will be part of a federal study of how climate change affects infrastructure. The State Department of Transportation has $125,000 in funding from the Federal Highway Administration for the study, which begins this week. Officials say Arizona is a good place for such a study because of its weather extremes. The study will focus on Interstates 17, 10, and 19, running from Flagstaff to Nogales. 18 other states are taking part in the study, which will conclude in 1 year. And more federal funding for Arizona will help to continue ensuring upgrades for clean water systems, especially in rural areas. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has granted a total of $26 million for grants and loan funds for the state's Water Infrastructure Finance Authority. The money will go for low-cost loans for drinking water and wastewater system upgrades throughout the state. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
Yesterday's election decided 2 seats on the Tucson City Council and 2 city ballot measures. Voters in other parts of the metro area determined whether Vail will become a town and whether some school districts will have larger budgets next year. Reporter Andrea Kelly joins me in the studio now to discuss the results. Andrea, good to have you in the studio today.
Thanks, Maria.
Let's start with the city council races. In Ward 5, incumbent Richard Fimbres faced challenger Mike Pollock. What happened in that race?
That race was a decisive victory for the Democrat, Richard Fimbres. And actually, in all of the city council races, we had a Democratic sweep. The Democrats won in all those races. So in Ward 5, Fimbres took about 60% of the vote to Pollock, who got about 40% of the vote. So a very decisive win. And we actually were at both of the election parties last night, so we have some reaction from both candidates about how that race went. First, let's hear from Fimbres. He's talking about what he wants to do with his next term.
My goal was to get people back to work, get them back to work, and get our community to start generating sales tax, which is what the city of Tucson lives off of.
And Mike Pollock, the Republican challenger in that race, he said that there's still a lot of issues the city needs to work on. He's concerned about a lot of things and really wanted the city to have some change on the city council to deal with those. Let's hear what he had to say in reaction to the results last night.
People have to wake up. I mean, they know that we have the problems in this city with no jobs, the potholes, our public safety, and if they vote for the same thing over and over and over again, what's going to change?
Well, now let's go on to Ward 3, where incumbent Karen Uhlich faced Ben Buehler-Garcia. Tell us what happened in that race. They were opponents the last time there was an election, and it was a very tight race. What happened this time?
Basically the opposite. It was a really tight race. They were separated in 2009 by about less than 200 votes, a very close race. This year it was much different. All of these ward races, Ward 3 and Ward 5, were separated by about 10,000 votes. So the percentages in that race add up. Uhlich had about 58% of the vote to Buehler-Garcia's about 41% of the vote. So a very big difference compared to the year before. We also have some quotes from them. We were at their parties last night, and Ben Buehler-Garcia didn't concede the race, but he did talk about if Councilwoman Ulick was to win the race, what he would like to see. Let's hear from him comment on the race.
I would like to see the incumbent, if she wins and stays in office, actually treat the voters with some honesty and some respect and say, look, we are facing hard times. We can take it. Go ahead and tell us the truth.
Now, Maria, we also asked Councilwoman Ulick what changed, what made up that difference in the votes from 2009 when they were close and to this year when it was a decisive victory. So this is her response.
Well, I think the times have changed clearly, and I think I ran on my record, and people have seen the efforts that have been made in the last 4 years to make sure that we navigate this downturn to the benefit of as many people as possible.
All right, now let's go on to Ward 6, which was an uncontested race, and it looks like Steve Kozachek has 4 more years.
He does. This would be will be his second term. He was running as a Democrat this year, which was a change. When he first ran 4 years ago, he ran as a Republican. And he gave a speech at last night's victory party where the Democrats were celebrating and said that he really felt like he's home. So I think he's really satisfied that he made that party change and looking forward to continuing to serve. But you're right, no one ran against him. So he was an easy win.
So this is the first city council vote that was totally vote by mail. What effect do you think this had on voter turnout? Maybe start by talking about what was voter turnout.
Sure. Turnout was about 27%. That's about 61,000 of the city's voters who mailed in their ballot or took it to one of those last-minute places where you could drop it off on Tuesday to vote, and those were the only 2 ways to vote. This was the first race where the first election where city council races were all mail. Of course, last year Tucson city voters had a road bond election, whether or not to spend money on the roadways, that was also all mail. But this was a bigger election, the first one by mail.
Is there any idea of whether or not maybe that influences it because you don't get as many people out?
Well, when this was first proposed, the Democrats were in favor of it. They said that it would make it easier for people to vote because they don't have to make the time on election day. But last night we heard from the Republicans that they think it contributed to actually making it more difficult for voters to cast their ballot. Let's hear from them. Let's hear from Ben Buehler-Garcia first.
We found a lot of people who thought that they could go to their normal polling place today and vote like they usually do. And we had to explain to them, no, you can't do that.
So the people who are elected to the city council are elected to represent a ward, but yet it's a citywide election. Everyone gets to vote for every candidate. How does that change the way they govern or operate once they're in office?
Well, it does mean that everybody who's elected has to think about the whole city instead of just the area where they live, but it also influences the elections themselves. We've heard over time many arguments that our races in the city of Tucson should be ward only, meaning you only vote for the one person who represents the ward you live in. What that would change in an election is the party representation, I think. We see that in some wards, particularly on the east side of Tucson, there's more Republican voters. But with a citywide election, there's more Democrats overall in the city, which makes it a little easier for Democrats to win these citywide races.
All right, now there were also 2 ballot measures asking for very specific things from the voters. Can you talk a little bit about those and the outcome before we move on to some of the outlying areas?
Sure. The first one, Proposition 401, was a measure that the city put on the ballot asking voters if they could spend more than the state limit on spending. So every city in the state is limited to how much money it can spend by state law. And the city of Tucson said, we'd like to spend more than that. We may even have more revenues than that in future years, but we have this cap. And voters said, yes, you'll be allowed to go ahead and spend more than that state cap on spending if you have the money to do it.
All right, and what was the other one?
Oh, the other was called Plan Tucson, and this is also sort of something that comes down from the legislature. The bigger cities in the state need to make 10-year plans, essentially, and the bigger cities have to get those approved by voters. So the city wrote its plan, what it wants to accomplish in the next 10 years, and voters had to say, we agree, we disagree. They agreed.
Can you tell us what happened with Vail and whether or not Vail's going to become a town?
Yes, that was a big question. Vail wanted to become a town. It would have been the newest town in the state, and voters there turned it down. I've got the percentage numbers here. It was 56% no to 44% yes. So we will not have a new town in Vail.
And what about, there were a couple of school district overrides. Just in the few seconds we have left, could you tell us exactly what happened with each one?
Sure. 2 of those overrides failed. So the Sunnyside override failed, and another one in Alter Valley, in a more rural area of Pima County, failed. But in Catalina Foothills, that school district will have some extra money to spend in the coming years.
Andrea, thanks for coming in with your report. Next, we'll talk about county bonds, which work like loans for the government. The county borrows money to do projects such as road construction or build community centers, and the money is paid back with interest over several years through our property taxes. Joining me in the studio now is Larry Hecker, chairman of the Pima County Bond Advisory Committee. Larry, good to have you here today.
Thank you, Maria.
Talk to us about the bond committee, as well as Pima County Administrator Chuck Huckleberry have both recommended that we delay the bond going on the ballot for another year until 2015. Can you talk about that and the circumstances?
Sure. It was a reluctant decision because the capital needs of our community are tremendous. As you mentioned, you bond for the future. You build projects for the future. And there's a tremendous need for capital projects in this community. The county administrator recommended to the bond committee that we recommend to the Board of Supervisors that they not hold an election, that they not call an election in 2014. And for a variety of factors, we, as I say, reluctantly went along with that recommendation.
Can you tell us what some of those factors are?
I think largely they're the result of the aftershock of the huge recession we went through starting in 2008. The short answer is the county wouldn't have the bond capacity to issue bonds were there to be an election in 2014. The soonest that the county could issue bonds without increasing the tax rate would be 2016. So we felt it prudent to wait until 2015 when the county could actually draw upon the line of credit that the voters approved.
So there's obviously that advantage. Are there any other advantage in waiting, but are there any other advantages in giving it another year to plan out what you want to do, what kinds of things we should accomplish?
Well, I can't say that this was a major factor, but it certainly is something that should be considered. 2014 will be a very detailed ballot. There'll be several state elections, federal elections, local elections, and the bond package would be at the tail end of the ballot. And there's always concern that when you have a long ballot, that the voters don't focus as much on projects and on items such as a bond election as they do on the other items that are on the ballot. Whereas in 2015, it'll be a shorter ballot. The voters will have a better opportunity to inform themselves. And I think historically it's been shown that the better informed the voters are, the more supportive they're going to be of bond elections.
Now, the county and the advisory committee together worked on a survey of the whole community, talking about what they wanted in a bond issue, and they came up with a pretty long list and a pretty high number on that. What kinds of things did you find?
Well, what we were trying to determine was the level of public support for bonding, and assuming that the support's there, what were the priorities of the community? We actually started out with a 2-week response. It was an internet-based response. And the responses were coming in so heavily that we extended it a week. And I think at the end, more than 16,000 people responded, which I'm told is incredible for a survey like this, which demonstrated to us that there is a fairly broad level of support for moving forward with a bond election and with some of the priorities that the responders indicated.
So tell us about those priorities then.
Well, interestingly, and the way the bond package usually works is there's going to be anywhere from 5 to 6 separate categories. And the voters vote on the separate categories, yes or no. And so the bond questions, or the questions in the survey, were framed much as they would on the ballot. The most popular item, the item that the responders felt were the most important, were job growth, education, and workforce training. So that sort of gives you a sense of where the public is. Parks and recreational facilities were also very high, and transportation improvements were also high. So that's just one indicator to the bond committee of how they should structure, what they should include in the bond package.
But again, that wish list was really long, even within those categories, because there were lots of very specific things. How does the bond committee go about whittling that down?
Well, the bond process, it's been successful because it's been inclusive, it's been participatory, and we hold public hearings throughout the county to try and get a sense of what the voters want. And we're talking about several projects that would be included in a bond project. Probably 50 or 60 different projects would be supported by bond revenues.
And how much are you thinking of asking for?
Well, that's a function of the property tax, how much property tax is available to support bonds. I think going into our last meeting, we thought that maybe $550 million could be authorized without resulting in a tax increase. The actual amount now that we've got another year will depend upon assessed valuations, how quickly the valuations increase in the next 18 months.
Now, if we're not holding an election for another 2 years, and you've done this big survey, will you have to have another survey closer to the time then? Because some of these things won't be relevant. The public mood could have changed.
Well, we may use a survey. One thing we certainly will do is to hold public hearings, public meetings. Starting in February, we'll be holding meetings, and we'll have a meeting each month, and the public's invited to come and express their opinion as to which projects should be funded, which are the highest priority. And with that, we'll start to develop a package and continue to meet.
So at what point do you call it before the election and say, these are going to be the big priorities?
For a November 2015 election, we would probably make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors in January of 2015.
Larry, it was great to have you in the studio today. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Republican Governor Chris Christie wins big in New Jersey, while Democrat Terry McAuliffe squeaks by in the race to lead Virginia. Plus, several major cities welcome newly elected mayors.
The Supreme Court tackles issues of church and state in a dispute over the prayers that begin one New York town's council meetings.
And imagine life where your ears never stop ringing. For millions of Americans and a growing number of combat veterans, there is no sound of silence.
It would last maybe a day, sometimes 3 days, and then it would go away. And then one day it just started and never stopped.
Those are just some of the stories we're covering on tonight's PBS NewsHour.
On TV's Scandal, Olivia Pope covers up other people's indiscretions while having her own affair with the married president of the United States.
Olivia Pope is an African American woman, and everybody wants her to be perfect because she has to represent everybody. So there's a box that you get placed in. My goal is to blow that box wide open.
Scandal's creator Shonda Rhimes on the Next Morning Edition from NPR News.
Tucson's long-awaited World War II memorial is a reality, nearly 70 years after the war ended. As Andrea Kelly reports, the dedication was significant for veterans and their families, yet it is not without some controversy.
Oh, say does that star-spangled banner...
I remember when it started on December 7th, 1941. I remember the announcement that we had been attacked at Pearl Harbor.
Powell served in a Coast Guard rescue unit from 1943 to 1946. He's one of the World War II veterans who came to see Tucson's memorial unveiled. The artwork honoring those who died in the war exists because a Tucson family pushed for its creation. Gilbert Quintanilla, a World War II veteran, and his partner Connie Lujan Harris approached the city in 2005 to try to get a memorial constructed. After they died, their daughters picked up the effort.
I know he'd pitched the idea to a few people for a while, and it just really wasn't going anywhere. And I know there were a lot of other people too that felt as strongly about it as him. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time, and it was when they approached Councilman Steve Leal, and that really was finally someone listened to him and ran with the idea.
I used to tease Gil that he was the best fisherman, and he would tell me I never went fishing, and I said no. I said when you saw Mr. Leal, you baited your hook, you threw it, and off went my mother, and she kind of like strongholded him and brought him back, and that's when they started to discuss it at Further Lake. They were a team, yes, they were a team.
The couple began working on the push for a World War II memorial so many decades after the war because their daughters say that's when they found the time.
I think because they were so busy raising children, families, and I think in his twilight years is when it really came to settle on him that, well, hey, wait a minute, we need to get this done. And
yes.
He really felt, I'm so sorry he can't be here because he really wanted to have it completed, before he passed away. But
and we tried.
Unfortunately, he can't be here.
We tried.
The memorial is in downtown Tucson's Armory Park. The location isn't what many veterans wanted, saying they would have preferred it to be with other memorials at Keno Veterans Park on Ajo Way. The significance of Armory Park was disclosed at the memorial dedication ceremony last week, when attendees learned Armory Park was where Tucsonans bound for service in World War II departed by busloads. Downtown was also important to Gilbert Quintanilla, his daughter says.
Well, I know my father was very passionate about having it downtown because growing up here in Tucson, this is where everything happened. I mean, everything was downtown. All his memories of Tucson, 30s, 40s, 50s, downtown. So, and he felt that, foot traffic, people would see it, and he was just adamant about it had to be downtown.
Veterans attending the dedication said they are proud to have a memorial.
Seaman First Class, Randy Powell, U.S. Coast Guard.
Powell was in a Coast Guard rescue unit during World War II and was part of the honor guard that unveiled the memorial.
And the feeling that you get from all these veterans that I have sensed here today is just tremendous. And I think it's a wonderful thing that the city of Tucson has done this for the World War II vets.
But there's been another issue since the memorial went up for public viewing.
I normally walk by here. I'm a resident and I find myself here often. I've been watching this being constructed. And one day I went by and saw that they had put the emblems on the front, and there was 5 of them, Air Force amongst them.
He was a medic in the Air Force and is a Vietnam veteran, so the emblem caught his eye. The Air Force wasn't created until 1947, 3 years after World War II ended. That, McLean says, means it shouldn't be on the World War II memorial honoring the nearly 400 Tucson and Pima County residents who died in that war.
It's historically totally inaccurate, and one could think it would be somewhat even disrespectful, the memory of those men that died serving in the Army Air Corps.
Thank you, everybody that worked on this project.
Artists Rebecca Thompson and Lori Slenning were commissioned to make the memorial. Thompson didn't want to comment on camera, but told Arizona Public Media the city's Veterans Advisory Committee and numerous others who saw the concept at public meetings said the 5 service branch emblems should appear on the memorial. The committees also decided the sequence in which the emblems would appear. Thompson says the memorial concept was vetted at numerous public meetings, and no one objected.
We saw artist renderings, and it did not include that. We approved them, and as a neighborhood, we're thrilled that it's here. If I had seen personally the final rendering that included that, I would have made some noise about it.
He says it's not an insignificant issue.
I think what the public should think about is, or be aware of, is how important heraldry and symbolism is to the veteran. When veterans meet each other, it's what unit you're in. You see another veteran and you look at his patches, and it's a history, and it's a fraternity that one can only really understand if one has served.
McLean wants the memorial changed to reflect just the 4 military service branches that existed during World War II. Artist Rebecca Thompson says someone would have to raise money for any changes. World War II veteran Powell says his interactions with civilians tell him the public is more understanding now than in previous decades.
I have particularly noticed, since I wear this World War II cap almost all the time I'm out in the public, in the last few years, and I'd say the last 4 or 5 years, a lot of people, really acknowledge the service that we performed in World War II. I didn't get that for many years, but now it's really changed, and you can go anywhere and the guy will walk up to you and say, "Thanks for your service," and I appreciate it, and I know they do too.
Tucson's new World War II memorial includes the names of nearly 400 Pima County residents who died in that war. Next, videographer Andrew Brown takes a closer look at the memorial event with this package featuring local singer Denise K. Higgins.
You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. You're the emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true for the red, white, and blue, and there's never a boast nor a brag. What should all acquaintance be forgot? Keep your eye on the grand old flag. You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. You're the emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true for the red, white, and blue, and there's never a boast or a brag. What should all acquaintance be forgot? Keep your eye on the grand old flag.
This is for my friend Stan Elby, local Marine. Semper Fi, Stan. God bless you.
That's our show. To keep up with the latest news and watch the segments from this and other editions of AZ Illustrated, go to our website, azpm.org. I'm Maria Parham. Thanks for watching.